or local hospitals in the region, all major surgical procedures are performed. In a mass casualty situation, damage control procedure was adopted and patients were transferred to military hospitals and civilian hospitals outside the battle zone, mostly in Colombo, where the definitive and corrective surgical procedures were done. There were interchange of patients between the military hospitals and civilian hospitals, depending on the availability of subspecialty facilities. Patients who needed prolonged hospitalizations were finally transferred to Military Hospital Colombo. Ladies and gentlemen, let me show you now the type of injuries encountered during this operation. Largest number of casualties we received from Vani Theatre, that was 78.5%. And the least number from Eastern Theatre, that was 5%. Majority of injuries sustained by the soldiers were due to blast, accounting for 59.6%, and gunshot injuries were accounting for almost 40%, and there was a small percentage of patients exposure to toxic gases. Among the blast injuries, majority were due to mortar and artillery blast, accounting for 81%. Balance include anti-personnel mines 9.7% and other IEDs 7.5% and RPG blast 1.6%. In both types, the blast and gunshot injury groups, majority were limb injuries, which are more among the blast injury victims. These are different types of blast injuries in the lower limbs. You can see the devastating nature of the injuries and how our medics are attending to those. This is an unexploded 60mm bomb, mortar bomb, stuck in the soldier's thigh. Our medical officer was able to remove it without getting blasted himself. And these are different types of upper limb injuries. And the next are head, chest, and abdominal and chest injuries respectively, which are more among the gunshot injury victims. These are some of the abdominal injuries and some of the chest injuries. Next are head and neck injuries. These are different types of head and neck injuries. Among the spinal injuries, majority were due to blast. These are some of the X-rays and CT scans of spinal injuries showing the spinal cord and the nerve injuries. Blast injuries are usually multiple and devastating, and they occur in various combinations. Some of the blast victims had associated eye and or ear injuries, and some had burns of varying degrees. The chart on your left-hand side of the corner, a type of injuries as per the region of the body involved, where you can see majority were limb injuries followed by abdominal and chest injuries. And the graph on your right-hand side of the screen are injuries as per the causative weapons, where the majority are blast injuries followed by gunshot injuries. These injuries varied from minor superficial soft tissue injuries to extensive devastating injuries resulting in loss of an organ or organs. Among the injured, 25% are severe injuries and 29% were moderately severe injuries, while others were minor injuries, of which there was a small percentage, 6.6%, who had only just superficial soft tissue injuries. They were treated at the MDS and returned to their respective units. 93.4% of all the casualties were evacuated from the field. An unexpected type of casualties, near drowning, was encountered at one stage of the operation when LTT blasted Kalmadukulam tank band. However, medics were able to manage the casualties without any fatalities. 2 outbreaks of disabling infection threatened the troops during this operation. An epidemic of chikungunya infection emerged in 5-9 division suddenly in early March 2008, resulting in evacuation of 12 officers and over 2,400 soldiers. They were off the action for nearly 3 months. At the final stage of the humanitarian operation, in March 2009, an outbreak of hepatitis A infection emerged in Pudukuduripu Pudumatalan area, which continued for several months, disabling 27 officers and over 6,000 men. Treatment of civilian casualties. There had been no differences or discrimination in treating civilian and military casualties. Being beloved sons of Hippocrates, we treated both groups the very best way we could do. In fact, those civilians had the advantage of taking treatment from medics who had immense experience in handling war woundeds under difficult situations. There were 2 childbirths in our MDSs. These are the complications we had. Immediate complications were mainly due to drug allergies, but they were mild to moderate degrees. In the intermediate complications, majority were due to infections, but they were not serious. There was a small group of patients who had antipersonnel mine injuries, developed acute encephalopathy syndrome, and another small group of patients who had extensive muscle injuries, developed acute renal failure. However, after taking necessary precautions and changing our management protocol, we were able to prevent those. There's a big list of late complications. Among all, ladies and gentlemen, you may notice that there is a significant percentage of post-traumatic stress disorders. Mental Health Department of Military Hospital Colombo has taken care of those. Let's see the sequelae of those with residual damages. Rehabilitation of those with varying degree of physical disabilities was done at Army Rehabilitation Center, that is Ranaviru 7 Rehabilitation Center. Well-trained, competent staff at Ranaviru 7 has taken over those who need further care for their rehabilitation work. Mental Health Department of Military Hospital Colombo has taken over the task of screening and clinico-psychological rehabilitation of those with varying degree of battle stress disorders. Workshop at Ranaviru 7 manufactures prosthetic limbs and various supportive devices for them. Vocational Training Center at Ranaviru 7 direct them to deviate from gun-held hand to other professions. Though they were differently able group of people, they continued their activities in different ways, and they are veterans in their respective fields now. Sports is one of those. Rehabilitation is not yet over. As per the concept of the Command of the Army, we have started building a wellness resort to accommodate permanently disabled, totally dependent war heroes with the intention of looking after them throughout their lives. There are 3 main researches underway: post-traumatic stress disorders, encephalopathy syndrome, and post-traumatic epilepsy. I am not going to comment about the results yet. They are too early to comment. Another project is going on at the moment in collaboration with the Biomedical Engineering Group at University of Peradeniya in manufacturing custom-made prostheses. The first surgery was done recently and is very successful. Ladies and gentlemen, let me divulge you the challenges we encountered during this humanitarian operation. Inadequate manpower was the main challenge we faced in this major multi-fronted operation. However, proper planning, training, and effective mobilization of available people were the key to success. Controlling an outbreak of infectious diseases during this type of a military operation was a real challenge due to a number of reasons, mainly restriction of free movement of the medical experts who were brought to control the epidemic due to enemy attacks, and also inability to follow necessary precautions to control the epidemic due to intense combat situations. Floods due to torrential rain was the threat to casualty evacuation system at one stage, but with the great support of the logistics staff and the hard works of the medics, did not compromise the due care for the casualties. Ladies and gentlemen, before I conclude this presentation, let me share the lessons we learned from this operation with you. Importance of having medically qualified men and frontline who initiated the treatment within few minutes of injury was highlighted throughout the operation. Presence of capable medical officers and paramedics in the field helped to minimize mortalities and save so many limbs in this type of high-intensity battle. This was enhanced by presence of an effective, practical and sustainable medevac system, use of antibiotics for the injured from the beginning to avoid unwanted complications, and availability of blood transfusion services from ADS onwards, and availability of good communication system for the medical officers to solve their complicated problems without any delay. Additionally, frequent visit of the Direct Army Medical Services and his staff to the field who joined the medics at ADS and MDS to treat casualties was an encouragement, not only to the medics, but also to the field commanders and the combatants. Ladies and gentlemen, to conclude this, I would say proper planning, training, effective mobilization of available resources, dedication and commitment of involved people at all levels resulted in saving so many lives and limbs of this type of high magnitude multi-fronted operation. Thank you.